Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
People who post derogatory hashtags or humiliating photoshopped images could be prosecuted under new legal guidance which aims to tackle practices known as doxing. There's also dogpiling and one more, virtual mobbing.
There are going to be new guidelines about what you can or can't say on the internet. It's an attempt to clamp down further on the offensive and potentially illegal things that people do on social media to stop bullying and harassment. So what behaviour are we talking about? Well, first there's doxing. That's when users publish private information about others on the internet. For example, if someone posts something that you don't like and you find out their home address and publish it online, that could now lead to a prosecution. Next, there's dogpiling. Dogpiling is like a virtual mob. It's when you see a post you don't like and then encourage others to send that user abuse or encourage others to harass them. That could now land you in court. There's also hashtag abuse. If you use an offensive hashtag or you repost a message where someone else has used an offensive hashtag, that could now be prosecuted. There will also be new guidelines to look at baiting or flaming. That's when you send abuse to other people online. The guide will be widened so that, for example, if you post fake pictures of your victim, you could also face the law. If there's someone you don't like and you cut and paste their head onto a porn image and share it, that could land you in court. And finally, there'll be more guidance on sexting. That's when you send sexually explicit messages to someone else. The new guidelines will focus on sexting between people in consensual relationships. If people say they're in a relationship and do it and they're under 18, that may now be okay. However, if one person is older when sexting occurs, that may now be considered grooming and sexually exploitative. The new rules are being published by the CPS. They're the ones who decide whether people should be charged for breaking the law. They say the new rules are to clamp down further on abuse and illegal behavior online. And remember, social media is real life. So if you wouldn't do it or say it in real life, you probably shouldn't say it or do it on the internet.
Well, let's hear from the Director of Public Prosecutions. Her name is Alison Saunders. She explained what online trolls need to stop doing if they don't want to be prosecuted.
It's very simple, stop committing offences online. People may not think that they're committing offences online because it's online, but they are. So, for example, harassing somebody online, being abusive and insulting online, you can't do, so long as it's grossly offensive. Coercive controlling behaviour online, anything that is an offence, you can't do it online. I think sometimes people think it's a bit of an anonymous space and somehow it's a free space, but it's not. So the guidelines make it very clear that online offending will be prosecuted if we have the evidence and it's in the public interest to do so.
I'm not sure it is that clear, you know. I mean, are you allowed to be generally abusive or offensive in your tweets, for example, with, you know, if you have an opinion about an X Factor contestant or a particular politician, are you allowed to tweet those kind of offensive comments about an individual?
Yes, I mean, we're not about sort of stifling free speech, and it's very important that people are allowed to express their opinions. If you commit an offence because you're harassing someone, that's very different.
So if you send that tweet to that individual, for example, that might be considered an offence?
Well, we'd have to really sort of consider carefully what it was. So just saying, I don't like you, or being offensive, you know, you can't sing or something like that, isn't going to be an offence. But if you're grossly offensive, so it really is quite a high sort of level, if you're grossly offensive, then we may be able to prosecute you under the Malicious Communications Act. So it's not just, you can't just be sort of mean, you know, being mean or being nasty is fine in the same way as being mean and nasty in sort of offline is, but it's being grossly offensive or if it gets into a harassment type situation.
What about inciting people online to get in touch with someone who sent you an offensive tweet?
Well, if the tweet is grossly offensive and you encourage people to retweet it, then you may be sort of guilty of an offence of encouraging or assisting. Likewise, if you want to sort of publish an indecent photograph or something like that, and you encourage others to do so, then that may well be an offence of encouraging and assisting. In the same way as if you are offline and you encourage people, for example, to go and commit burglary or assault, you would be guilty of an offence.
But there are a number of female politicians, for example, a number of high-profile people in the media who quote, tweet or republish an offensive tweet they've received to their followers to let them know the kind of abuse they're getting online.
And I think that's where the context comes in, and it's very important that we consider the context and what it's about. So looking at why are people actually asking others to retweet or to adopt an offensive hashtag, for example. And that's the important thing that the guidance makes clear, which is looking at the context of the offending, looking perhaps if you're looking at indecent images, looking at the age of the offenders. So if you're under 18, you're children, and you're of a similar age, then we would look at things perhaps very differently to a sort of an adult doing that to a child.
I want to ask you about what might be considered an offence when it comes to offensive hashtags. I'll give you a couple of examples. Hashtag, if my daughter brings home a black man. I mean, would that be something that you would now consider prosecuting?
I think that may be. Again, it depends very much. I mean, just of itself, you wouldn't necessarily think that is, but some people, you know, again, if it's directed at an individual, it may be that that's a hate crime. So inciting, sort of, you know, looking at whether or not it's an aggravated offence because of the racial element to it. But again, it's sort of very much looking at, we'd need to know far more about the context of the offending and who it's gone to, how widely it's gone. And that's the difficulty with the internet, is that it goes out so quickly into so many more people.
Exactly. So would you be potentially looking at prosecuting thousands of people or the originator of the hashtag?
It would be very much looking at the sort of the major harm, which is around the originator of the hashtag and the person who has encouraged and assisted. And obviously it would be a matter for the police to investigate, but you know, that's where the harm will be, as opposed to all those who retweet. But again, it would depend on the circumstances.
Alison Saunders, who's the Director of Public Prosecutions. Let's have a word with Kevin Healy. He's been abused online for about 5 years because of his campaigning around autism awareness. Kevin, what do you think of this new guidance?
I think it looks all good on paper, but in reality, will it work? I don't think so. I've had 5 years of constant abuse now, and not even one troll has been prosecuted or jailed.
Even though you've made complaints?
Even though I made complaints to Twitter, made complaints to the police, CID, Staffordshire CID, and not even one troll has been jailed. I just find it unbelievable, really.
OK, so I wonder what else the authorities, people like Alison Saunders, could do then?
Well, I don't know, you know, around the legislation around social media, you know, it's quite big and it's quite vast. Also, you know, with the laws in the UK, if somebody's trolling you from outside, my last batch of trolls were from the US, and the police came back to me and said, you know, Kevin, we can't do anything because these trolls reside in the UK. So not only does the legislation need to change in the UK as well, it needs to change international. There needs to be international laws around social media.
OK. Very briefly, Kevin, the impact on you of this kind of online abuse?
It's been a nightmare. It's been horrific. It's affected me. It's just been horrendous, and you know, it doesn't go away from you. It stays with you 24 hours, 7 days a week. There's no escape from it.
I'm really grateful for your time, Kevin. Thank you for coming on the programme. Thank you.
I've been getting away with it all